Hi, I'm Suzanne Siracuse, and welcome to season 2 of my podcast, focused on the future, keys to building a profitable, sustainable, and impactful business. And I'm excited to be partnering with wealthmanagement.com on this. This series will focus on what firms need to embrace to ensure their growth and success for the future. And you'll hear from industry leaders and advisors on what is working for them. I have a great lineup of guests in store, and today I'm talking with Lisa Crafford. Lisa is Managing Director and Head of Advisory at Constellation Wealth Capital. In this role, she leads a team that works alongside Constellation's partner firms to grow and strengthen their businesses through consulting, coaching, and creating communities. Great. Well, welcome, Lisa. Wonderful to see you, and thanks for being my guest. I'm really looking forward to our conversation today.
Thanks, Suzanne. I'm really honored to be here with you.
Great. If you have followed along for this podcast journey, I always start off asking my guests the same question. Tell us about your journey into a career within the wealth management industry and working alongside and with financials. How did you get your start?
Yeah, and I love the podcast and follow along, and it's been fun listening to everybody else's answers to that question. So mine was a little bit of an accidental story. I grew up in a family that never talked about money. I still to this day, I'm not entirely sure if my parents have or ever had a financial advisor. And when I moved to the States, my husband was working for an advisory firm. And so I kind of started working there for a little bit and really just fell in love with the business. And along the way, I moved to a different advisory firm and I was given incredible opportunities to learn and fail, which I did plenty of both. And made some really incredible friends around the industry. I kind of always felt like I was the slowest child and didn't know as much as everybody else. And so I kept on trying to surround myself with people who knew more than I did. And so I met just really, really amazing people who were always very generous. And then I had a couple of really meaningful mentors that really kind of catapulted my career. And they opened their networks to me. They were generous with me, and they taught me an enormous amount, not just about advisory businesses, but just corporate America and advisory businesses and who's who and where to read things and how to process information and how to give advice to advisory firm owners, having never been one. And that led me here to Constellation and having a great time. And it's certainly a career path that I never thought I would have. So
yeah. And you mentioned a couple of your mentors. Well, I'm glad that you're in the industry and you have a lot of people that very much respect you, and you've helped a lot of firms. I know that. You mentioned mentors, and I was just at a benefit last night for Savvy Ladies. And Savvy Ladies is a nonprofit that helps women feel empowered around their finances. And there's a Male Ally Award. And I was talking to this gentleman, and he was just so authentic about his desire to want to help others with their networking, with opening up his network to them, with giving women a seat at the table when many of us didn't have it. So do you feel comfortable sharing who your mentors were or a mentor or two?
Oh, sure. Well, all of my mentors have been men. Actually, I think some of the hardest people I've worked for were women, and maybe that's why I am the way that I am and try to be different. But yeah, I was so lucky. Mark DeBergen and I got to work really closely together when he was at Pershing, and Gabe Garcia and Frank Bubb. And those are really the first three that I encountered when I was at Pershing. And like I said, we're incredibly generous with this bright-eyed young lady that didn't know a whole lot, but was really eager to learn. And I'm really lucky that I still get to see them and talk to them and engage with them. And actually, just the other day, I sent somebody else to Mark, and I said, "You should talk to him. He knows everything about this subject." And so, still lean on them. And yeah, very, very lucky indeed.
So interestingly, I've had Mark on this podcast, and and I've been very vocal about Mark being a wonderful mentor to me as well, especially when I was at Investment News and we purchased the Moss Adams benchmarking studies,
Mhm.
and I was like trying to figure out how we were going to incorporate that into our business model. And Mark was so helpful, but it's really how I learned about the business of financial advice. So I think Mark is
Mhm.
a great example of, if you're someone listening and you don't have a mentor, make sure you try and seek one out. That's a really important piece to the puzzle of, I think, being successful in most
Mhm.
industries. And I love that you brought up how mentorship played a role in where you are in your journey in the wealth management industry. And I just think we have to continue to pay it forward and share, open up our networks and share what we know with individuals. And that's I think, one of the special parts to this business. So thanks for sharing a little bit about what you're doing. And you know, over the years, as you mentioned, you were at Pershing for a number of years. You're now at Constellation. I want to hear a little bit more about that. But you've worked with a lot of advisors in your prior role and in your current role. So what are you seeing as some of the key areas that are critical to a firm achieving success now as our industry and the people it serves continues to evolve?
Yeah, absolutely. So yeah, at Constellation, we have 7 partner firms, and at Pershing, I was working with about 300 RIAs every year. Some overlap year to year, but quite a lot. And so I feel like I've got a nice little cross section of what the market looks like and what different folks are doing. And I'd say I think let's bucket it into threes because that's always a nice number for
Yes,
stuff like this.
I
One
love
is
threes.
one is, yeah, right. One is growth. And I think, if you think growth is going to happen to you and you're not planning for it and investing in it, it's very hard to achieve profitable, repeatable, meaningful growth for your business. And growth doesn't just have to be revenue. It can be, your people and the clients that you serve and what you're doing for them. But you really have to hire for it. You have to buy the right tech for it. You have to teach your staff. You have to educate your clients. It's a lot more than just like having a cool marketing plan. The second is that and I feel like I'm a broken record whenever I am out in the public talking about stuff like this, but this is a people business. And so people need developing. And also there are natural limits and kind of skills that we have as people, right? Some people are very, very good technically. Other people are very, very good with their EQ and interpersonal relationships. Some are exceptional at sales. And I think that the best leaders that I've encountered in the space know what they're really, really good at and know what they're maybe not so good at and hire around them. And they're not afraid to hire people who are better than them at something or smarter than them at something, and let those people have agency to impact the business. And the third one I would say is tech, which feels a little cliche perhaps, but I think technology absolutely makes us better as advisors. Even just thinking about what we used to deliver to clients 15 years ago when I started in an RIA with portfolio center reports that were 9 to 27 pages long, and it was the same graphs and charts that they got last quarter. Is that really helpful? And there's just been so much change, which is fun and exciting, and good to kind of be on the sidelines watching. And I don't think that we've kind of reached the height of innovation for wealth tech and fintech just yet. But there certainly has been a lot, and that's had a meaningful impact on the client experience and the employee experience inside these businesses.
Yeah, it's interesting that I didn't know what your three buckets were going to be,
Mhm.
but all of my questions after this tie back to all three of those. So that's
Oh,
very
there you
much
go.
in alignment, which is great. And I agree with you about, tech innovation and where it's going. We are a little bit of a slower to adapt profession, and I don't say that in a critical way, but I think because of regulation. And we're dealing with people's money, that it's harder to adapt some of these new wealth tech and AI driven solutions. Even though I just was at this fantastic Advise AI conference. It was all about AI use cases in wealth management. And I think we're going to see, I think you're right. I think we are just at the tip of the iceberg of all of the different things that AI is going to allow advisors to do more of. So I couldn't agree more. Now, the first thing that you mentioned in your answer to the prior question was about growth, right? So everyone seems to be talking about organic growth. So why are some what are some of the successful growth strategies that you've seen the firms that you work with implement that have attracted new prospects that actually turn into clients?
Yeah, absolutely. I feel like I've seen it all, and then I meet another firm and I learn some new thing that someone's doing out there, and that's cool. And I think there's certainly room for innovation there as well. I'd say the first one that I encountered myself and that I've seen repeated infrequently, which is surprising to me, is the niche strategy. I know there's been a couple of folks out there talking about it recently. The first firm I worked for, they partnered up with a large employer in our market. And when you became partner, you got the card of our financial planning firm and got told to call them. And part of the benefits package was money that paid for the services. And this individual advisor had grown his book to several hundred millions of dollars and never had a website, never done any marketing, and just had a steady flow of new clients every time someone made partner. And it's not necessarily a perfect strategy. Hopefully there's some diversification of clients, because you never want that company to go out of business. But I think what it's telling you is that you as the advisor or the advisory business got so good at knowing what these people needed and where they were at, that you could really tangibly show them the benefit that financial advice could provide to them. And you get so good at their benefits package, at where they are in their life and their next 10 years, because you've seen it play over again and again and again. And I have two teenagers, they both play baseball, and I watch them pitch and hit and take ground balls, and they are so good at it. And I get up there and I try and throw a baseball and I look like a clown, and I'm okay with that. They're very, very good, but like, you get good at what you practice at. And so if you have a niche strategy and you understand the people that you're serving, the needs that they have, you get really, really good at it. And that makes a difference. That turns into referrals, that turns into growth, and that turns into that business continuing to send you clients without you having to spend $1 on it. And I think that is an underutilized strategy that I wish more people could lean into. And the second one I would say is actually events. And I think that is also similarly underutilized. People love connection and they love community. It's been a big part of my experience and my story here professionally. But I think that events can play a really meaningful role in how you serve your clients, because hopefully, as people who are financial advisors and planners and wealth managers and whatever words you use to describe yourself, what you're selling is not necessarily just returns. Well, hopefully not. It's peace of mind, and it's giving people the freedom and the willingness to enjoy the wealth that they've created. And when you bring people together and they get to see that, that's really, really powerful. And it's a way that you can really shine as a business, to say that, hey, we're more than just about sending you quarterly performance reports and sitting down and talking about the markets. It's a way for you to show your commitment to philanthropy or community events or fundraising for communities in need, locally to you or kind of around your network. And also you can do it virtually now. And I think COVID was a real blessing in that sense, and that it really challenged people to think about where their clients are and how they serve the clients that aren't necessarily local to them. But I love working with firms that do client events and think about it that way, and think about kind of opening up the doors a little bit in that sense. And then the last one I would say is content. And content can be consumed a lot of different ways. I am a massive podcast fan. I constantly have it on when I'm driving and walking the dogs and out and about. And it can be a podcast, it can be something else. One of the firms that I worked with in the Northern Virginia area had this program they did every year for kids who just graduated high school and were going to college. And it was like a whole day symposium type thing for the children of clients to prepare them for um, I laugh because they called it financial independence. I'm like, well, let's be honest, they're not really financially independent.
Yeah, yeah.
Baby steps, right? Baby steps. And the kids would go home and they would talk to their parents about, what they learned about budgeting and cash flow management and taxes and all this stuff, right? That like, frankly, as parents, we don't necessarily do the best job of. And it was just such a great idea to think about content perhaps a little bit differently, and creating that connection point with the next gen before there's a need to create that connection with the next gen. But yeah, I think content, just there's so much we can do. There was a firm in Atlanta that I worked with years ago, and they, I'm talking like 10 years ago, did a really good job on the socials a long time ago.
Mhm.
And I asked them what their most engaged platform was, and it was Instagram. And they were posting like book of the month and posting pictures of their team when they were out volunteering in the community. It had absolutely nothing to do with financial planning, wealth management, market reports, nothing. But that's where they got their commitment from their community and the buy-in to what they were doing. It was very cool. So.
Yeah, no, and I love everything that you mentioned, and that human connection and feeling like you've got something in common with the advisor that you choose, or they understand you. And so going back to the niche strategy, a lot of times you have someone that may specialize in working with women in transition,
Mhm.
or airline pilots, or business owners, or people with pets, whatever it would be. But not only is, I think, a niche strategy or a niche focus important from your, client segmentation perspective, it's a lot easier to market to, and it's a lot
Mhm.
easier to craft your message to a very specific group of people. So I love that. I love the event idea. I heard we used to have this woman speak at the Investment News Women Advisor Summits, and she would present all these different really cool client event ideas every year. And the one that like resonated with me the most, as a, like speaking as a client right now of a financial advisor, is she would hire a professional photographer, and people could bring their pets for like, get a professional photo of your pet. She like would do something outside, and it was like this, she got all of her clients and prospects, they brought their animals. They all were like, they became this community, and it really was just a really super effective. I think the referral rate was like through the roof. And then
Mhm.
finally, the podcast on children of clients, I think, is brilliant. So brilliant. Not only is it important to educate young people about being, financially savvy, but just what a great added value for you as an advisor to show your clients. So those are really, really great ideas for those that are listening.
Yeah, well, and as a parent, I can guarantee my kids don't listen to me. So I think I'll be shipping them off to my advisor when it comes time for them to go to college, and maybe they'll speak some sense into them too.
I think sometimes getting a third party endorsement or somebody else talking about it is like much more effective,
Yeah, yeah. I
So
actually have an advisor working with my kids now. They're 14 and 12,
uh-huh.
and they have Utmer accounts, and they get money for their birthdays instead of gifts. And if they put money in themselves, then we match it dollar for dollar until they're 18. And they have a direct line to her. And when they're ready to put money in, they drop her a line, and she talks to them about the investments that she's made for them, and they can go look it up in our portfolio management software and see the performance. And it's something, right? Just getting the kids involved is good, but definitely having a third party is key.
Yeah, for sure. What a great idea. That's such a great idea. I hope other people that are listening like think about that. That's a really, really cool idea. So Shifting to the second area, the second bucket that you talked about, which is around talent. So let's talk about the importance of finding, retaining, and training top talent and why it's so critical to a firm's overall success for the future. So you just hosted in your Chicago office a group of your next gen rising stars, which I think is such a cool idea. So this is a two-part question relating to this topic. First is, what are some proven techniques and programs that you've seen be effective in helping to broaden the talent pool into our industry? And then second, what were some of the key insights from those rising stars that you think important to share out to firm leaders and advisors looking to hire?
Yeah, absolutely. So this is something I've been really passionate about since I kind of fell into the industry. And again, going back to my story, I didn't know that it existed. It seemed like a very foreign concept to me. And so part of my passion was to help other people learn about it earlier than I did so that they could make more informed choices. And when I came to Pershing and Mark was working on a bunch of stuff for financial literacy, I got really involved in that. And we did programs at Pershing covering from elementary school through to high school. I got to go to high schools and teach financial literacy. I did during COVID. I don't know how many Zoom lessons with middle and high school kids, talking to them about financial literacy and what careers existed in finance that weren't, didn't require you to be some kind of math genius. And who knows where those kids are at. You can't follow them all, but I hope that it gave them a little bit of an insight, a little bit of a kind of a vision into the future. And I think that anyone can do that. We all have schools in our neighborhoods. Many of us are parents and we have children in schools and we have connectivity there. And if you don't, then, go online and like Google map the closest elementary, middle, or high school to you and just go down there and talk to the principal, ask them what they do. In the United States, there's only a handful of states that mandate financial literacy classes, and that's kind of a gap. And so there's some advocacy that we can do there as well. But I think that if we expect kids to pick this as a major or follow the CFP program at any of the schools that offer that now, then they have to know about it before they get to college. Because by the time they get to college, it's too late. They've picked something else. And Luke Dean tells the story of how he goes around campus at UVU and like loiters around the accounting and finance students and like tries to convert them over to financial planning. And it's admirable, and he does an incredible job at it. But wouldn't it be better if they just came into college in the first place wanting to be a financial advisor or work in the financial advice business and understand how that works? And so I think it starts before college. So that's how we broaden it. Clearly, that's a long play, and that's going to take a couple of years for the benefits to roll out and be felt and seen in our industry. But I think that's something really simple that everyone can do, and it doesn't take money or a huge amount of time. And guess what? Like everybody who's probably listening to this podcast has a greater than average financial literacy level, and you have something worth telling people. And if public speaking is frightening to you, then there are organizations that will take your money and happily provide that education in some other way. That's been kind of a lesson that I've learned along the way, and something that I hope more and more folks in our industry will continue to take up. And as I was saying, I would just introduce someone to Mark the other day. One of our new team members at Constellation was talking to me last week, and he's like, Lisa, I'm really passionate about financial literacy, and I want to do something in Chicago. And I was like, well, let's do it. Like, let's figure out what we can do at Constellation, what you can do. And that's why we're going to chat with Mark and, start to kind of build out an idea of what that might look like individually and corporately as well. And so just takes, having the conversation, I think.
Yeah, that's such a great idea. And you're right. Anybody can do that. So thanks for sharing those ideas. And what was like maybe one or two of the key insights that you got from the rising stars that were at your offices? Was there anything that was surprising that came from them about what they're looking for or what motivates them?
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I love having next gen groups. I've been running next gen groups for the last 7 years, and I started it because I didn't have enough friends, and I thought I could make some more friends. And then that group, we just really bonded, right? Like we're the 30s and 40-year-olds coming up in the industry, and we're looking for community, and we're looking for advice from our peers. And so I love having the next gen group come in, and Mike and Erica on my team lead that group and did a phenomenal job picking speakers and faculty that contributed to the program. And really the faculty matter a lot because they're the ones that get the conversations going, and then it's like who's in the room. And what so many things came out of that meeting, and I think for me the most interesting of those was that the content we covered was all around leadership, management, executive presence, organizational behavior. It was a lot of like people and talent type stuff. And I think the surprising thing to me was that many of them talked to me afterwards about how they underestimated how much time they should spend on developing these skills. And I think that that's very true for a lot of people in this industry, particularly the founder crew that's out there that perhaps started a business 20 years ago and now find themselves running very complex organizations. And I think that the next generation that's coming through is a lot more introspective and wants to invest more time in themselves in learning and being taught the skills of leadership, of management, of organizational behavior and what that means. And I've had several conversations with the firms that participated afterwards who've said, hey, we'd love to have so-and-so come back and do a presentation for our organization at our end of year meeting, or just come and do more one-on-one coaching with our team, because I feel like these are skills that we haven't yet invested enough time in, and we really want to lean in on that. And so very encouraged and very motivated by that response. And, I think that's just a reflection of the quality of people that are coming up in these businesses, that they want to invest in that for themselves and for the business.
Yeah, that whole professional management piece, right? So, I think many of the people that are leading firms came in as advisors and kind of became firm owners and managers by chance, right? So now that there's really a case for the business of professional management and the business of professional firms, then the new generation is really thinking like, okay, I'm going to need a little bit more skill set development in these areas, because a lot of times
Yeah.
we all learned it by by trial by fire, you know what I mean, like
Yeah.
let's try
Yeah.
this,
I
see if it
mean,
works. But you're right. I think that the next generation is much more intentional about that type of stuff. That's actually a really, really important insight to pull out of this podcast. The last area that you had mentioned was around technology, and I'd like to get really specific on this last question around technology because it's such a broad topic. But how do you feel technology is playing a role in the staffing for the future advisory firm? So how is this really affecting how firms are going to staff in the future?
Yeah, so I started in this business in 2007, and so I've seen a fun evolution of technology and kind of the breadth of what tech can do. I also started in an operations role, kind of very much back office, and so that's kind of where I tend to go with these types of questions. I think there's kind of a technology in the front office and the back office. It's really valuable. But I think that technology is creating opportunity for us to have more time. And so, something that used to take an hour takes 5 minutes. Something that we used to have to spend days waiting for a response on, we can almost get it back immediately. And so the question then becomes, well, what do I do with this time? Right? How do I, as a business leader, leverage the time to make my team more productive, to create more opportunities for value creation, to be more proactive with our clients or with each other? And so, what I think the technology is really allowing us to do is honestly create more interesting jobs. because it's less time sitting around waiting for things, or less time trying to find information, and more time trying to take that information and turn it into value. And I think that's where we're currently kind of in a challenge position, because we're not really sure what that necessarily looks like or how to accomplish that. I think we're getting better, but I think
Mhm.
there's still a ways to go. And and certainly, like, even just DocuSign as a very, very basic example, right? I remember years and years ago at our little RIA in the DC area, we would spend, I don't know how many hours printing out pages and sticking little sign here tabs, and then you'd miss one and you'd have to call the client back and be like, oh, I'm so sorry, Mr. and Mrs., but you have to come back to the office because we missed a signature. And it's like, goodness gracious. DocuSign has just been such a lifeline, I think, on that. And there's many, many, many more examples, but I think, the opportunity really is like, okay, now what? We've got this extra time, now what? How do
Exactly.
we,
What are we going to use that time? What are we going to,
yeah,
how are we going to help clients more?
how do you make that a more meaningful employee experience, right?
No,
What additional things could that person do? What could they become an expert in that you've never had an expert in before? I mean, what a cool thing to tell some new junior person coming out of college, of like, you know what, like, your career is going to go in a lot of really cool places, but we don't really know where that is yet because we're still figuring that out. You know,
Yeah, or can
that's
you help us
exciting.
figure out like which
Yeah,
technology we should be implementing, that's another
yeah,
kind of key area that I think is
yeah,
exciting for the next gen talent. I love that.
yeah, yeah.
So, so true. So, Lisa, I can't believe it. We are at our last question, which I always ask on every podcast, with the title and theme of the podcast focused on the future, keys to building a profitable, sustainable, and impactful business in mind. What is your last line? What key takeaway do you want to leave our audience with?
So I've thought about this. This was the one question I did get in advance. So I have thought a lot about this, and I think there's a lot going on in our industry, and I think we are in desperate need of great leaders. And so, if that's you, I hope that great leaders recognize that it takes an investment in yourself and an investment in others to really create a space for the future. And so, um, there's a lot of different ways you could take that. And I'd love to hear from people if they decide to pursue that and mentor folks or invest more in themselves and their own development. But I think that's my last line for today.
Yeah, the importance of that. And I think it's becoming more and more important to next gen on that professional development piece, on the obligation or the responsibility of leaders to really share their learnings, to bring others along in their journey. I love that last line. That's a great one and an important one. So again, thank you so much for being my guest today and for sharing such great insights on many things, especially around what firms and advisors need to do to best attract and retain top talent, as well as the various effective organic growth strategies that you shared. Really appreciate that. I'm Suzanne Siracuse, and thanks for listening. I hope this episode leaves you feeling even more excited to be focused on the future.